You tell me. When the TV guys,
Yeah. See you. Thanks for hosting us.
have they tested the mics?
That's somebody
Have
from
they tested the mics?
Tech TV.
Check.
I don't know.
I see somebody in the control room from
Yeah.
Tech TV.
I wonder if they've
Lights.
tested these. Have you guys tested these mics? See, I can't hear them.
Yep, it says it's okay.
Okay, we're all set? They can hear us in here? All right. It's on. I just can't hear it.
I don't think there's any PA.
They know.
Really?
I lost my wife 7 years ago, and I went back in the fall. Yeah.
Do you know if any of the PA system is on? Because it's going to be hard for people to hear.
He takes his he has taken his
My wife died of a heart attack at 46. My son was in the 4th grade. My daughter was in the 8th grade. And I got a chunk of life insurance.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if the PA system was on. All right.
Great.
We'll get to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Cash, and
Okay.
I was a politician before I met my wife.
So the mic,
Yeah, the mics are all on.
be careful with papers. There's an on-off switch, so it's on right now, so you want to be off when other people are speaking.
Okay. We should get started. It's 10 o'clock. Attention shoppers. I get your attention. We'll get started in just a minute. We just want to have quiet. We'll get started. Remember, this is going to be recorded for posterity. Good morning, all these brave people out here on a Saturday. I'm Christine James from WATD. This is Charles Mathewson from WATD. And we are here to moderate as much as we can this forum for the Democratic candidates for the state Senate seat for Plymouth and Barnstable. I just want to do a quick disclaimer before we get started. We are here in a volunteer capacity. We are in no way endorsing any particular candidate or any particular party for this seat. If there's a Republican town committee in any of the 6 towns of this race that wants to host something for the Republican candidates, we're available for that too. And make sure you tune in to WATD on Monday, February 24th at 6:15. We will be doing back-to-back forums that night. First up, the Republicans, and then the Democrats at 7 that are running for this seat. So I just wanted to make sure that we have that information. But it's great to see a full house here on a Saturday morning when the weather is not that promising. I want to first have Ed Bielecki come up and say hello, because you're the man that put this together. And
Thank you.
please say a few words.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank Sue Runny from Pembroke, from the Democratic Town Committee there, all our committee members for participating and helping put this on. I want to thank the candidates for coming, and Christine and Charles, and our friends that are helping us videotape this. Also, all of you for coming, because without you, this wouldn't be possible. So we're really glad to see so many people here interested in the candidates and their issues. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ed. So welcome again. Love to see democracy in action, as we say all the time. Charlie and I have been doing this for a long time. We love to cover candidates' nights and races. Couldn't pay me enough to run for office. It's tough because, you've got the press after you. Sometimes very warranted, sometimes not, but that goes with the game. You got to get a pretty thick skin to run for a race, and Charlie and I have been doing this a long time. This will be my 30th year at WATD, so we've seen some great races over the years. I know, Charlie, you've been in this business even longer than I have.
Yeah, and I did these with, when I was still working for newspapers with Ed Perry.
Right.
And back when Plimpton was still hand-counted, and we sometimes were up until 3 in the morning for results.
Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about how we're going to run this. We're going to use the same format that we use for all our political races. We've got the 5 Democrats that are running in the primary race, including Becky Coletta of Pembroke, John Mahoney of Plymouth down there on the end, Stephen Michael Palmer of Plymouth, and Susan Moran of Falmouth. Here's all the
And
candidates here.
Tom Moakley.
Tom Moakley, I'm sorry. I always make at least 1 or 2 mistakes, so please bear with me. The Plymouth Barnstable Senate seat, in case you're not aware of it, includes the towns of Bourne, Falmouth, Kingston, Pembroke, Plymouth, and Sandwich. And I just want to remind people to make sure your cell phones are off during this, and candidates no cell phones on either. So that's something that we try to stick to. Our format is simple. We ask the candidates to have opening and closing statements prepared. Opening statements, 2 minutes tops. You can go shorter, but you can't go longer. Closing statements will be 1 minute. And helping me to enforce this, don't you like that word, is our timer, Bob Erlitzson, right there. And what will happen, he will start the timing. He'll put the green sheet up when it's time to go. When the yellow sheet comes up, that means you have 10 seconds. I know, even though this is Massachusetts. And then the red sheet means stop. And I will, if you keep talking, I will do the slow countdown, give you the stink eye, then you get the bell, because we're tough, okay? I know people running for office like to talk a lot, so we've got to keep things under control. And in between here, after your opening statements, we will ask a round of questions. The answers are 1 minute. Now, if there's a follow-up, of course, we'll give you more time. Then we get to the lightning round. That's the best part of these forums. Why is that, you ask? Well, because lightning means lightning, quickly. The answers are either yes or no, and yes or no means yes or no, not a big explanation, sort of like you're getting yelled at by the school principal, or 1 or 2 sentences tops. And 1 or 2 sentences means 1 or 2 sentences. Why am I smiling? Because they can never do it. So we still ask, we still make the effort. We like to make people get right to the point. Then we go to closing statements. Now, what we did beforehand is we wrote everybody's names out very scientifically, and Charlie just picked them out of the cup for me. So the order will be to
Actually,
open.
the candidates picked them out.
Oh,
I wanted to make it very fair.
Very nice. Okay, we're going to begin with John Mahoney, then go to Stephen Michael Palmer, then go to Becky Coletta, then go to Thomas Moakley, and then Susan Moran. And the order is reversed at the end. So I'd like to thank the people that are here who supplied questions. This is great because we have some of our own, but of course we'll try to get as many of your questions in as possible. We just ask people to, of course, be polite, be respectful of people when they're trying to answer and not interrupt them. So let's get started with our opening statements, and we will begin with John Mahoney. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Christine. It's always good to see you. My name is John Mahoney. I'm running for State Senate in the Plymouth and Barnstable District. Growing up in this district, I've seen it blossom over the years from my hometown of Pembroke, Massachusetts, the home of the First Parish Church and the Pembroke Resolves, to the streets of Falmouth and Knobsgolight, to my current hometown of historic downtown Plymouth. I have always called this district home. My parents instilled working-class values in me. Both were MTA members. My mother was a teacher at North Pembroke Elementary for 25 years, and my father taught industrial arts in the Rockland school system. Today, as a proud member of Local 4, I keep those values close to my heart. As a teenager and young adult, I would constantly read the newspaper every day from cover to cover. I wanted to know what was going on globally and locally. As time went on, I felt a need to facilitate change. At the age of 20, I ran for the select board in Pembroke. I came in second out of 3. I didn't gain a seat, but I never lost the passion for public service. So when I moved to Plymouth, I got elected to town meeting. I got appointed to finance and advisory, and it's been an honor for me to serve on the Plymouth Select Board since 2008. So why am I running? As someone who knows our unique issues, I know I can bring transparent and accountable leadership to the Plymouth and Barnstable District, coupled with a vision for a robust economy, a cleaner environment, and a better tomorrow for all of us. I want all of our sons and daughters to be able to raise their families in this district. That means ensuring progress for our schools, our services, and our environment. It also means addressing the skyrocketing costs of living, infrastructure, and public health concerns that we currently face. That's the balance I believe I bring. I've never been afraid to say that this doesn't work. We need a different approach. And I can guarantee you that's exactly what I'll do on Beacon Hill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was John Mahoney. Now we're going to go to Stephen Michael Palmer for your opening statement.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen Michael Palmer from Plymouth. Who is Stephen Michael Palmer? Stephen Michael Palmer was a town meeting member in Plymouth a few years ago. I started in Braintree as a town meeting member at 17 and a half and couldn't serve until I was 18. My wife passed away a few years ago, and I didn't know what to do with my life, so I decided what was I before I was married, and I was a politician. I ran against Bill Bulger in 1990 and got 47% of the vote. And my wife found out who Bulger was, and she told me, you either get out of politics or marry me, so I married her. I have 2 beautiful children. When my wife died, my son was in the 4th grade and my daughter was in the 8th grade, and they've done well. My daughter graduated from Bridgewater State College, summa cum laude. My son's going to be a plumber. In my house, you're either police, plumbers, or politicians, so we're doing the Irish jig here. I enjoy politics. Why am I running? I ran last time and got over 5,000 votes when I ran against Debbie, and I felt that, you know, this year coming up, I think I could regain those 5,000 votes because it was a primary. This is a special election, but usually when people come out, they'll come out for a presidential election more than they'll come out for a state election. So things are going well. I'm tired of the good old boy political network up at the State House. I'm tired of the special interest groups. I'm tired of the lobbyists. I believe there's a new culture up there that has to be turned over. You know, the people that pay $1,000 for a Big Shots fundraiser to get a job or promotion in return, a job you and I pay for. You know, I'm sick of the $18 million raises they just approved themselves. It's a sad state of affairs. They've made a democracy out of my democracy.
Thanks a lot. That's Stephen Michael Palmer in your opening statement. Now we're going to go to Becky Coletta.
Hi, my name is Becky Coletta, and I'm running to be your next state senator for the Plymouth and Barnstable District. I'm a mother, a wife, a daughter, a trained social worker, an attorney, and a local public official. Like many of you, I wear many hats, but what defines me and what inspires me are my personal values and my life experiences, my story. When I think of my childhood, I remember the struggles that my parents faced, and yet the opportunities that still existed then. My parents grew up dirt poor, and neither of them graduated from college, even though my mom was a class valedictorian. And yet 3 of their 4 children got graduate degrees, and the fourth pursued her passion to become a massage therapist and develop her own small business. It was my mom who held the family together. She was the glue that held the family together, and she's where I got my strength from. She raised 4 kids with an alcoholic husband, he was my father, and took care of my blind grandfather who lived with us for about 15 years. And we had to go out of the house to work because she had lupus, and that was the only way to cover a pre-existing condition and get health insurance. At the same time, she still did community service and made sure we did our homework. From her, I got my strength. I got my grit and my determination from my dad. My dad grew up on the streets in Michigan, and he learned that he had to fight for everything he was going to get and everything he was going to give to us. It wasn't going to be given to him, and he made sure we knew that. He also fought addiction his entire adult life. And even though he's not drinking, he continues to fight it today. Through these experiences, they instilled in me the importance of education, community, service, and standing up for what is right. They were the drivers of me getting involved, me going to law school, and me getting involved in this race. I thank them for all they've given me, and I'll talk more later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Becky Coletta. Now let's move on to opening statements from Thomas Moakley.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. My name is Thomas Moakley, and I'm a Democrat running for the state Senate. For those, I think most of you here already know, but for anybody who's watching this later on online, this is a special election. Our primary is coming up on March 3rd to fill this seat vacated by Vinnie DiMacedo, including the towns of Kingston, Pembroke, Moran, Sandwich, Falmouth, and Plymouth. Even before we knew the date of the election, and the candidates know better than anybody that it took a long time for us to know the day of the election. My campaign was out there knocking on doors, and when I was out knocking on doors, I would tell people that I'm Thomas Moakley. I was born and raised in Falmouth, a town that's known for its sense of volunteerism to parents who made it a habit in their own lives. I tell them that I'm an Eagle Scout, a graduate of Georgetown University, and that I've been putting myself through the evening program at Suffolk Law School while working full-time for the district attorney. And I tell them that I got into this race because I think the issues that are most important to our community are also disproportionately affecting young people. That's things like climate change, that's things like the opioid epidemic, to which I've already lost 3 friends just since I graduated from Falmouth High School. Now, these are serious issues that require urgent action, but nonetheless, I'm optimistic. And of course, I couldn't run for office if I wasn't optimistic. And that's because I think that the best day to be born in the United States is today, and that tomorrow will be even better. And that's because of the innovations that we're making in all sorts of industries, in business, in technology, and medicine. Our job, and the job of everybody on Beacon Hill, will be to make sure that government catches up to those things. Now, I'm 25 years old, and in 1952, my great-uncle Joe Moakley first made his first run for the state legislature at the same age. And I want to be part of that same generation of new leadership that's more interested in getting things done than earning headlines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas Moakley. Now we're going to go to Susan Moran.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for getting up and coming here. It's so great to be in a room full of Democrats that love to serve, love to keep aware of things. I grew up the oldest of 5 girls, and my dad was a great inspiration to me. In fact, that's part of why I'm running. When people ask me, I say this district needs a fighter. We deserve our fair share. My dad instilled in me growing up the commitment to service, and he was in a wheelchair. He was a vet, and from that chair, he made a difference in people's lives. He was just incredible inspiration and helped people, but very strong and very fierce, committed to what he knew was right. And that served me later in life with 3 children, the youngest of which was 2 years old. I was stricken with breast cancer. I was told I would not make my son's 5th birthday. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I used that fierceness that my dad instilled in me, and I'm very healthy today. That's the kind of fight that I bring to this race. I have many positions. I've been working in public service for over 5 years. I'm part of the regional and local government in business development, and I will fight for this district. One of the things as a Falmouth selectman that I did is when we widened Route 28, people were concerned that that road was going to come right up to their front door. I started a citizens committee, and we fought. Now that citizens committee has access to town resources, state resources for every project that we do in the community. And that's the kind of fight I will bring for you as your state senator. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Susan Moran. Now we're going to go to questions. Sir? I'm sorry. We're going to ask you a round of questions, and these, your answer has to be 1 minute. And again, we'll be timing you. Let's begin with Charles Mathewson.
Okay, we have a fairly large group of candidates, and we're going to see one another at least one more time. We usually ask personal questions and issue questions because it's a large group and we're going to see you again. We're going to stick pretty much to the issues this time. And just to warm up to that, I want to ask you about NIPS. Anyone have any NIPS with them today?
Not today, Charlie.
Okay. Last time I was in the State House, I was at a hearing for the nuclear power plant and NIPS. Strange, but true. There's a bill pending in the legislature to put a nickel deposit on nip bottles. Some people feel that that will solve the incredible litter problem that we have with them. Other people say, you know, it's a nickel isn't enough. We need to ban the nips. And the third position seems to be, why take another opportunity away from people out canning? Let them pick them up. So how do you feel about the nip problem? Should we ban them, put a deposit on them, or find another way to support people who are canning? John, I see you're getting ready.
Charlie, you always come up with the questions that nobody's going to predict are going to be asked.
I try.
But having said that, I think the overall issue, the larger issue, is that there is, obviously a year or two ago, China stopped taking recycling and waste from the United States. We need a domestic market to be created nationally for recycling, and we need that to happen in the Commonwealth also. With respect to, you know, litter in waste that's out of control, and it's been out of control for decades. It's it's part of our society, unfortunately. With respect to the NIPS, the nickel solution, the nickel deposit put on these bottles, I don't buy for a moment that that's going to solve the problem, Charlie. It would continue. We need to do something. It needs to be looked at. But right now, I wouldn't support the nickel deposit.
Okay, Tom?
John brings up a really good point about the fact that we don't really have a very good system in place for recycling right now. A lot of municipalities, a lot of organizations that say they're recycling really aren't. And I think that we need to have stronger oversight on the state level for making sure that when we're recycling, we're actually recycling. And I applaud a lot of the municipalities that are going in the direction of banning single-use plastic bottles under certain circumstances. I think from an environmental point of view, something like a 5-cent return on NIPS is something I would consider.
Becky?
I am more in favor of a ban of NIPS. I have a hard time understanding why we need them. The other day I was watching on Facebook as someone was talking about watching someone go into a liquor store, drink 3 NIPS, throw them out the window, and drive away. That's a bigger problem, and that ties into the fact that we have a problem with addiction that goes well beyond opiates. We're making progress on opiates, but over the last 4 years, the CDC says our life expectancy has gone down because of overdoses, suicide, and cirrhosis. It's not just opiates. We had a progress in opiates, and we had a slight increase in life expectancy last year, but we had the highest suicide rate ever. We need to go beyond looking at this as a recycling issue and also see it as an addiction issue.
Thank you. Stephen?
For those of you in Plymouth, you might have seen my bags and bags and bags of trash that I have picked up over the years as a town meeting member in the town of Plymouth. Not lip service here, community service. I have diligently picked up Bourne Road as well as State Road, etc. Charlie, I think they should raise it for a dime instead of a nickel. I think people would, and the thing about it is I think the homeless could get out there as well as the prisoners and, pick it up. I don't see that as much as I would like to. I like to see the prisoners on the road picking them up also. I am agreeing with you, Charlie, for a nickel, but I'd raise it to a dime. Maybe somebody else would get out there, but I have picked up thousands of gallons of trash in the town of Plymouth. Thank you.
Sue?
Thank you. Charlie, I did see you up at the State House while I was testifying against Holtec. And the NIPS issue, I'm proud to say, was brought forth by folks from Falmouth, the litter reduction team. What I would say to that is I think we should expand the amount beyond the initial amount, put the money directly into education on all substance abuse. And I think we have to look at it regionally because the criticism comes from not giving businesses enough chance to adjust, number one. Number two, well, if we ban it in Plymouth, they'll just go to Kingston. So we have to do some work when we get to the State House to look at how do we regionalize this and look at the effect on businesses. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting, you folks provided me with a lot of good questions here, and it's clear that you're very involved and very interested in what's going to be happening with whomever gets elected to the seat. Now, a number of these deal with Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant, Holtec, decommissioning. So I'm going to start with this question, and this is about how would you change the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel, or NDCAP, meets, I think, the third Monday of every month. We're in touch with Sean Mullen, and we try to preview this and cover a lot of these, to address its failings and to hold Holtec accountable to the district. I know there's some bills right now that are pending where they do want to change the makeup of the board, but it would be interesting to see what your perspective is on how you could influence what's happening with NDCAP and with the whole decommissioning process with Holtec. That's a lot to answer in a minute, but please try your best. Let's start on this end with Sue.
Sure, thank you. So at the same testimony at the State House, I provided testimony on behalf of the legislative government of Barnstable County. I'm Deputy Speaker for the Assembly, and we had put forth criticism of narrowing the protections and also of failing to include both sides of the bridge when we talk about the committee that's assessing the risks. So I supported Senator DiMacedo, Senator Sear, Rep. Peake, and Rep. Fernandez in that on behalf of the Assembly. We need to, Plymouth is doing a good job in trying to provide ordinances to deal with hazardous travel and doing, regionally we are doing what we can, but we need a say in the room, and that has to be expanded. Thank you.
Let's go to you, John Mahoney.
So, I'm a member of NDCAP, the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel, and the problem that is being asked in the question is that typically when a vote is taken to move a proposal forward, it doesn't get enough votes of the majority of the committee because there's multiple abstentions. You have industry people in there, you have Holtec people in there, and they abstain. And you can't get to the 11-member threshold for a vote to push something through. At the end of the day, that committee is advisory to Governor Baker. It's a 21-member committee. Ultimately, when it doesn't matter if you're talking about Holtec, Entergy, or Boston Edison, the first owner, the NRC, your U.S. Senate, and your U.S. Congress has built the NRC up to a level of omnipotence. They are all powerful. They control everything that goes on with respect to Holtec in the decommissioning of that plant. We are bringing forward a demolition industrial bylaw to deal with having some sort of local control as far as the trucks on some of the roads down there in Manomet, and hopefully that'll pass town meeting.
Thank you, John. Remember, too, with your final closing statement, if you feel that you didn't get to answer a question fully, you can always include that in your final minute closing statement. Let's go to you, Becky Coletta, next. Same question.
So I agree with John that part of the issue here is the NRC and its power. I mean, they're the ones who voted to let Holtec be the sole entity that's liable here and to let energy off the hook so that if there are problems in the decommissioning, there's something like $2 billion in the fund, right? But if there are problems in the decommissioning, if there's a leak or a waste, that's not going to cover it. And it's the NRC that let energy off the hook. And our state AG is fighting that and trying to get something back there. But what we can do locally is to try to strengthen that board and work on issues like the roadways that John's talking about, but also trying to work on monitoring of the casks that we're going to have there for dry nuclear waste until there's some solution to get them out of there. That's a key issue that has not really been resolved, is how we find out if there's radioactive leaks before it's way too late.
Thank you. That was Becky Coletta. Thomas Moakley.
I agree. We need to restructure the commission so that special interests aren't outweighing the community interests whenever they're taking an important vote. And Becky also brings up an important issue, which is that we as a nation have no solution for spent nuclear fuel. In 1982, Congress passed the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, which was going to put into place a national response to the problem of nuclear waste. And so since 1982, it's been perfect and it's all been putting away fine. No, it's all been on site. And what's happening now that we don't have any plan for it is that we're running out of room. And so places are spending less time with their nuclear waste in the pool storage and putting them into dry cask storage before they should be. And even once the Pilgrim Station is finally decommissioned, we'll still have that dry cask storage on site. This should be a national issue that is getting virtually no attention. And it's because the federal government has said that they have final say on this, and the states have very little power.
Thank you very much. Now let's go to Stephen Michael Palmer.
Very interesting to hear my worthy candidates talk about the decommission as well as the nuclear power plant. The fact is that I toured that when I was a town meeting member. It took me an act of Congress to get in there, but I did get in there, and I toured the plant itself. Fact is, I'm not a status quo. I'm not going to tell you what is right or what's wrong, but those rods aren't going anywhere, okay? The NRC is so powerful, they don't even listen to the meetings. I don't even go to the meetings, to tell you the truth, because I feel that those rods aren't going anywhere. So we have to take precaution as a town. The town let it in. The town is responsible for finding the solution, as well as state government. Simple as that. Thank you.
Okay, that was Stephen Michael Palmer. Charles, follow-up or another question?
I have another question on a different subject, and I'll have a follow-up to it. Water. It's becoming an issue in this area, strangely, given that we're on the largest aquifer in the state and one of the largest in New England. But we are at the point where we need to balance commercial development that will lower taxes. John, I know I said that, and you have a certain opinion on that. And using the water resource. So my first question is, how do you balance conserving water and commercial development? Let's start with you, Sue.
Thank you for the question. So in Falmouth, as Board of Selectmen Chair, we decided amongst the board to prioritize what are our goals. It's a single source aquifer, as you said, and we have a lot of work to get to clean water. Falmouth built a terrific water treatment plant that the community was committed to clean water, but we still need more resources. What we do is we look at what are the community needs. Do we want affordable housing? Do we want more business so that we get a lower tax rate for our individuals? Do we want to prioritize various, whether it's people that build close to development centers, as the county has recommended? We have to prioritize. We have to ask the citizens what they want the most and then build around that.
John.
Water security is the #1 issue. And don't ever doubt that for a moment. Those cranes over the city of Boston, they were put there by visionaries who created the Quabbin Reservoir in the 1930s. Boston and the 128 belt have water security. 5 of the communities in this district have reached build-out. They comprise 180 square miles of land, the 5 that don't include Plymouth. In the 2000 census, there were 100,000 people. In 2010, there were only 102,000 people. And Falmouth lost 1,400, so you've only gained 2,000 people across 180 square miles. Water security is a significant issue. Plymouth is facing it. The fascinating thing is that you sit on a body of water, the Plymouth and Carver Aquifer, that you can't get to because you don't own the strategic locations of land. And the cautionary tale is the city of Brockton, who has put in $300 to $400 million in a desalination plant that they don't take any water from. And that all ties also into affordable housing.
Thank you. John Mahoney. Stephen Michael Palmer.
I want to talk about Plymouth. I'm a member of the Redevelopment Authority in Plymouth, and I go to the meetings of the planning board, and I hear that they're going to build another 100 apartments in Pine Hills, or they're going to build another 200 homes in Red Brook, and the water isn't there. The state has come in and has stopped the building of homes in some areas in the town of Plymouth. So the fact is that I have gone to the planning board and I have said we have to stop building. You know, we've got to the point where, you know, the water will end up being all used, and then what are we going to talk about then? So I feel that we have to stop building, and it's as simple as that.
Tom.
You hear about what one town has been doing or what another town has been doing. But I think there's 2 major problems with having this serious issue up to municipalities. The first is that it's just not fair, because the geographic resources that you are allotted are the geographic resources that you're allotted. And nobody, no matter where they live, should be without this basic human need, of course. So I think we need a regional response to this issue, a regional authority that is a little bit less concerned with the day-to-day issues that face town politics as well. Because what happens in those situations on a town level is that you have to deal with the issues that are literally at your door, and that's understandable. But when you're talking about building an infrastructure for the future, you need to be thinking 50, 100, 150 years ahead. And we have to build in climate change to those plans as well.
And Becky?
So, sitting on a planning board, you see that development is coming, whether we want it or not, and that we have to find some way to plan around it. We can't simply deny that it's coming and that it has a useful purpose if we want to grow our economic infrastructure down here so that people can stay, if we want to build affordable housing so that people can live here in the next generation. But I do think we have to take into account not just the build-out, but also the effects of climate change that Thomas refers to. As the water rises in the bathtub, that's the ocean, right? It comes into our watersheds and infiltrates those watersheds and starts to create more issues for us along this line. The other thing we really need to look at is the way that our watersheds are used. For example, Brockton is still able to use a lot that's in the Jones River watershed as opposed to using the desalinization plant or hooking up to the Quabbin Reservoir water. So there are a lot of regional approaches we can take, and we need to work on this issue.
Okay, and as a follow-up, I want to pick up where you left off. Hey, Josh. Yes. This is Josh Warren, who happens to be the chairman of the Central Plymouth County Water District Advisory. Yeah, say that fast. The follow-up is, this is an odd senatorial district. It runs from Pembroke to Falmouth, geographically odd. Doesn't include Hull, so it's not personally odd, but geographically it's odd. Becky, continue on the idea of Brockton taking from the watershed that includes, in this district, Pembroke and Kingston.
Well, and actually, I started looking at this issue when I was on the Hanson Board of Selectmen in dealing with Monpont Pond back in 2003 and 2004. This is an issue that's been going on for over 100 years, where Brockton is been allowed over time to take more and more water and to store water in ponds that are in Halifax and Hanson and Pembroke and Kingston.
And Plimpton.
And Plimpton. Sorry, I forget about Plimpton. Sorry.
Everyone forgets about Plimpton.
It is small. But anyway, I digress. And the issue is that there's only so much water in the watershed. When we look at rainfall and we think about whether we should have watering restrictions, there's only so much water in the watersheds. And when Brockton is storing water and taking the water for Brockton, which has seen a lot of growth over time, there is less water available in the watershed for our wells and for our sources of water in our own district. And that's something that we really need to deal with because it's not a problem that's going away and it's affecting our environment as well as our water supply.
Tom Moakley, should Brockton continue to take water from the Jones River?
You ever see the movie There Will Be Blood, Daniel Day-Lewis movie about Texas oilmen? This is essentially what's happening. I drink your milkshake. And it's understandable. And that's because we don't have a regional authority that has any teeth in this matter. And they may have advisory capacity, but we shouldn't have a situation where towns are pitted against each other like this because they're just trying to do what's best for their citizens. I think we need a more regional approach to this or else it's going to continue to happen.
Stephen, the legislature invented this problem. What would you do to solve it?
I'd tap more of the lakes around the area and get the water from the lakes instead of underground.
Okay.
The wells. Kind of like Braintree does. I was a town meeting member in Braintree, and we have the Braintree Reservoir there, and we never had any problems.
John, you're originally from Pembroke?
Yes, so I grew up in the Silver Lake region, and obviously this is one of those lessons where those individuals who can't learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them. So Silver Lake, Brockton 60 years ago had the political muscle to get complete control of that body of water. If you look at the Quabbin in the 30s, the state created an ecosystem. They surrounded it with 150 square miles of open space. There is no human activity out there. It is all about multiple watershed protections around the Quabbin. It's at Silver Lake, since Brockton got to control, it's the complete opposite. It's about contaminating multiple watersheds around that body of water. And when they don't have enough water in Silver Lake, they take from Monpont in Halifax, or they take from Furnace Pond in Pembroke, and it is unconscionable. So if they had gone into conservation 2 decades ago and proactive investment in their infrastructure, they're not out $300 to $400 million. And that is the lesson that we all need to learn. Because if you're going to desalinization, it's over.
Susan Moran.
Thank you very much. So that's one of the approaches that, in terms, when you look at intermunicipal agreements, on the Cape, we have a 209 plan. Before that, I was on the Water Quality Coalition, where individual towns are able to look at their watersheds, look at their clean water issue, and make decisions about how they want to go forward. We've saved a lot of money. It was originally proposed we do tons of sewering. We've found alternative ways through shellfish, through IO systems, through lots of technology and using science to see what makes the best approach. If every town has an opportunity to join with the towns in its area and look where on their borders and make an intermunicipal agreement to treat their water and have clean water for the future, that's the best approach. It's not strictly regional, it's just talking to your neighbor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any follow-up to that?
Follow-up to my follow-up?
Yes, just checking here. Okay, we've talked about NIPS, with nukes, Pilgrim, water. I'm going to get to pot in a bit, but these are the issues that we talk about as reporters. But when you're out on the street, when you're talking to people, when you're running for office, I'm not sure these are the big issues you hear about. I know people complain about education, taxes, et cetera. When you're out campaigning, Becky, Coletta, what's the one issue you're hearing from residents in the Plymouth Barnstable Senate District?
Donald Trump? But seriously, it is the one issue that I hear most frequently. But that's not something we can do as much about. Although when things happen at the federal level, what we have to remember is that it pushes down to the state level a lot of decision-making. We see a lot more block grants. We see a lot more when it comes to appliance standards, light bulbs. To what extent does the rollback at the federal level, which on the light bulbs we may not be able to do anything about, create more opportunity and more need for us to tackle things like energy efficiency standards, like protecting our wetlands and protecting our watersheds? What can we do at a local level to protect ourselves from some of what's happening at the federal level? When the federal level steps back, that's when the local level becomes even more important for the values that we hold dear.
Okay, same question, Sue Moran.
Sure. It's really climate change where I go, and the way we look at it is the blue and green economy. It's about taking a problem and turning it into jobs, turning it into commercial opportunities. When you look at climate change, it's the same issue on both sides of the canal. We're looking at various sources of, we've got turbines in the ocean, for one thing. That creates jobs. We've got green economy issues. We've got new technologies when you look at home building, when you look at automobiles, when you look at our greenhouse gases. If we, as the state has recently done, if we look at the legislation and make sure that it comes back locally, we will have opportunities for more jobs, which will also encourage housing in the right places.
Thank you, Sue. Same question, Stephen Michael Palmer. What do you hear when you're out campaigning?
When I'm out campaigning, I hear about the taxes. Everybody's taxes go up in Pembroke, Kingston, Plymouth, Bourne, Sandwich, and Falmouth. It's a shame. I have a idea of a reverse tax. If they're gonna pay me $60,000, I'd like to give 6% back to the Commonwealth. They're tired of the $18 million raise the lawmakers approved themselves. They're tired of, the new $16 million that the state police are asking for. Or how about the 960 employees that make $200,000 a year, or the 17 people that make over $500,000. You know, we've just got to the point where, you know, we have to cut budgets, we have to cut salaries. We can't keep, you know, adding on to the tax base of everybody's life, okay? Deval Patrick created 1,000 more jobs paying $100,000. When is it gonna stop on the backs of the taxpayers?
Thank you very much, Stephen Michael Palmer. Now let's go to, same question, Thomas Moakley.
It's addiction. I haven't met a single person in the district who hasn't known someone personally, either in their own family or their community, who has died. It's not a moral failing, it's a mental health issue. When you cut your finger, you know where you need to go. When you or one of your loved ones or a friend is in the throes of addiction, where do you go? A lot of people don't know the answer to that question, and a lot of people, even if they do, even if they happen to have the resources available to them, don't have the insurance that's able to fix it and help them cover it. And that's why we need parity between mental health and physical health care.
Same question, John Mahoney.
The number, I have to agree with Mr. Palmer. The number one issue when I'm on the doors, when you're a local community, you're not delving into the social issues. It's predominantly the correlation between the level of property taxes and what is that individual, the residential property owner, getting in return for services. It's property taxes or overtaxation. And that's why one of the things I'm proudest of in the town of Plymouth was we built the first new town hall, first town hall in the 400-year history of the community without raising property taxes. We took the local meals tax option back in 2014 and we passed it correlated to a home rule petition preventing it from going into the general fund. It's in its own separate interest-bearing account. We got a $54 million visionary proactive town hall without raising property taxes a penny. And on top of that, within the context of the economy of Plymouth, nearly 2/3 of that revenue comes from individuals that don't live in the town of Plymouth. So people from traveling from Europe, other parts of the United States, and other parts of the Commonwealth are paying an extra 37 cents on a $50 meal, and they're paying for our town hall.
Thank
That's
you.
how it should be done.
I want to get a quick follow-up question here for all candidates. We asked, I'm sorry, did I not?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, though.
see, I'm writing this down.
Oh,
I'm not just winging it here.
Oh,
I'm not doodling, I'm writing this down. Make
see,
sure
I was
everybody's
confused
fair.
because I generally wing it.
Okay. Now, I've asked you what you're hearing on the street when you talk to people when you're running for office. If you could define your candidacy with one issue, not 3 or 4 or 15 tangents, what is your one issue that you are running on for this office? I know it's tough. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about your future here. Let's start, Stephen Michael Palmer. What's your one issue that you are most concerned about running for this office?
I'm a moderate Democrat. I don't believe in tax and spend. And when I see Amazon, $800 billion company, and they don't pay federal taxes. The laws were created for the corporate world. When is someone gonna start creating laws for the middle class to lower the taxes so the guy has a little bit more money in his pocket to pay his bills? You have health care. My son and my daughter are outraged to see that I pay thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a year. I don't even get sick, but when they get sick, they have to pay a copay and they have to pay a deductible. They're asking me, Daddy, what's the problem? The problem is the politicians up at the State House don't represent the middle class. They represent the corporate people, okay? That law was created by corporate people with Amazon. I will never buy anything from Amazon.
Okay, thank you very much. Same question, Tom Moakley. What's your one big issue?
Climate change. It sounds dramatic, but it's factual that it's an existential issue for my generation, and we need to start doing something about it now.
Becky, Coletta, your one issue?
So it's difficult for me, but I think that I start with the economic imbalance, the wage and wealth inequality that is growing in our country. And I picked that one because it intersects with everything else. People are feeling hopeless because they don't see that the economy is growing for the middle class. People feel that their property taxes are too high. And you know what? The middle class, we have a very regressive tax system in this state that hits the middle class harder than it hits the wealthy. The wealthy are making more in this economy, and they are paying less as a portion of their disposable income. I think we need to move forward on the Fair Share Amendment that would have a marginal tax rate of 4% on income over $1 million a year. I think we need to move forward with closing corporate tax loopholes like the Water's Edge loophole that allows corporations to move taxes overseas. And I think we need to continue to strengthen organized labor and make sure that we have something to offset the growing concentration of capital.
Thank you, Becky Coletta. Sue Moran, same question. What's your big issue?
Thank you. It's economic development. Economic development is the key to making the economy work better for us, stretching just like we do our home family budgets. For example, tourism. There's great tourism in the district. Tourism is important because it brings in a thing called OPM. That's other people's money. That's something that saves you, that keeps your family dollars in your pocket. Be innovative. A lot of folks want to work at home, save on childcare costs, which is astronomical, have more telecommunicating. A lot of folks have, jobs they want to do aquaculture in the ocean. I think at the state legislature, I'm going to put forth a bill which allows certain parts of the ocean to be used for farming. That's something moms can do an hour or two a day while the kids go to school, and they can still get back for the soccer games and everything that I did.
Thank you, Sue. John Mahoney, same question.
Sue, can I use that OPM?
I've patented it.
If I find out that you passed the meals tax in Falmouth and it went into the general fund, I'm not going to be happy. So I'm campaigning, like I said, predominantly the issue is affordability, taxation, and services. I'm campaigning on my track record the last 12 years in the town of Plymouth. I want to be a good elected official, not a political hack. And I tend to occasionally not to be politically correct, but I have a list of accomplishments that we've done collaboratively with Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, and we get things done. There are numerous issues that are very important. Thomas mentioned climate change. In 2012, we created the Division of Marine and Environmental Affairs in Plymouth, a standalone division that is focused exclusively on the environment and on water. With a regional leader in the northeastern United States with respect to dam removal projects. We lead Massachusetts for wetland restoration. We've removed half a dozen structures from beaches. So we're proactive and we're trying to get out ahead of this.
John
And there's a
Mahoney.
lot to be done.
I have not used this bell this much in a forum probably 10 years. This is good. I like this. Charles Mathewson, questions for the candidates.
Let's see. We've talked about opiates. It really comes down to a mental health issue and alcoholism. I worked in human services back in the dinosaur age, and I saw deinstitutionalization happen. We were putting people in horrible situations. What followed on from that was supposed to be local mental health clinics. We haven't seen the local mental health clinics. The Reagan administration killed the funding for that. Should the state be more proactive in re-upping community mental health clinics? Sue Moran.
No question. Another piece of legislation I intend to file is credits for employers who help out employees. I worked for 5 years in addictions treatment, inpatient, before I was a lawyer. I know the struggles. I know the fact that it's all substances. It's a scourge on the economy. It's an emotional wreck causing in families. It's something that we just don't have a handle on now. I think we need to put pressure on insurance companies to step up and to extend coverage so that folks who are in the grips of any kind of addiction have enough support to get over on it, and I think they need more support in their jobs. Thank you.
John.
Charlie, I completely agree. I first moved to Plymouth, I got involved in Babe Ruth baseball, and in '03 or '04, I was fortunate to win the league title in Babe Ruth in Plymouth, and the best player on the team was a young man named Mike Boynton, and I had to attend his wake in November of '14 because of opioids. When this issue started to accelerate, the Board of Selectmen in Plymouth went into executive session, and we came out of there unanimously that we were going to support 9 incremental officers and take that to town meeting to create a street crimes unit to attempt to get some of this material off the streets, not to come down on the addicts, but get the dealers and get some of this material off the streets. We've worked collaboratively with BID Hospital, formerly known as Jordan in Plymouth. You have a community outreach program. You're working between the health community and law enforcement. And of course, we need to continue to invest and help these addicts with whatever they need so we can get them hopefully out of the throes of this addiction.
Stephen, what about community mental health?
We know that the opium companies have produced 25 pills to every American in the United States of America. I mean, do they make that many M&Ms? I mean, it's a very sad, sad situation we have here in the national level. I blame the politicians. I blame the corporate people that making billions and billions of dollars off of it. It's a crisis. What are we doing? I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm not going to sit here and talk about it. It's the national level problem. Can we solve it here? No. But we can solve some of the problems with care, action, and commitment by the people that are here today.
Becky, what about community mental health?
So we haven't funded it. I mean, this is why back in the 80s I was a Democrat, because we have consistently not funded behavioral health and social services. And I've been talking about this my whole life. I grew up in a family with an alcoholic father. I know that this goes beyond the addict themselves. It affects the members of their family. We have kids growing up with addiction in their families who become at higher risk for addiction as adults. When I went back to get my master's in social work, we were talking, I was at DCF for a year. Every legislator should spend a year at DCF and realize how underfunded and overburdened it is. It's not just about the addicts, it's about treating the family systems, it's about funding mental health in the community, it's about giving people ways out and providing more supports.
Tom, talk about community mental health centers.
I absolutely believe that we should fund them, and I think that the other ideas that I mentioned sort of reflect the fact that this isn't something that just has one solution. Nobody has that solution because it's something that is so dynamic. There's so many different paths to addiction that we need to be doing everything we can from all sorts of angles. It's a disease of despair. One of the other things that hasn't been mentioned yet, although I agree with a lot of the things that have been, is that most of the sober homes in Massachusetts are not regulated. I think it's over 70% of the sober homes in Massachusetts are not regulated. And that's another area of improvement. So we can make sure that when people are committing to these facilities, either as a patient or as an owner, that that relationship is going to be beneficial and that the people that are living there are in an atmosphere where they can get to a point of recovery.
Do you believe there should be reform within the state's Cannabis Control Commission? Mr. Moakley?
I think we're obviously very early in our implementation of this, and we're still figuring it out. There's a lot of municipalities battling back with the Cannabis Control Commission, and what we don't want it to turn into another sort of situation where there's a few kind of bigwigs that are controlling the licenses, and it just becomes a sort of Wall Street situation. You know, the voters of Massachusetts decided that this is what they want. So we need to make sure that we're implementing it in a way that works for communities, but not in which communities are changing the law.
Okay, same question, John Mahoney.
Just following up on what Thomas said, it's in its infancy. This passed at the ballot in Plymouth in November of 16. The community, we legislated it, we zoned it, We entered into the pilot programs. So we, quote unquote, went with conservative zoning. We did it in the light industrial. So you have Camelot Park off of exit 5, and then you have the North Plymouth Industrial Park. So there's an open house this weekend, today and tomorrow. Triple M, Medicinal Marijuana of Massachusetts, is opening their doors because they're currently selling recreational. So this was something, and Christine, you could obviously probably tie in. You're asking about the Cannabis Commission. You can also do the Gaming Commission with respect to the casinos. Do we need to change that also? So both of these are currently working their way through the issues. We had a transportation company in front of us Tuesday night, and it is ever evolving. So the only way I would advocate to change it if we found out that there's some, obviously unethical behavior going on with respect to its members.
Thank you. Becky, Coletta, same question.
So on the cannabis, I think part of the issue goes back to the federal level and the fact that cannabis is still a controlled substance at the federal level, which means that you don't have banking support for cannabis to be, we say that it's legal in this state, but you generally can't get loans, it's not easy to get access to banking facilities, so you're going to have big money that's going to control the industry. You're not going to have mom and pop shops who are able to grow their own and sell their own. You're going to have big money, big influence, big fights, and it's not necessarily going to be easy for the towns to fight against it. I would like to see us work with our federal counterparts to deal with that at a federal level so that we can have a more open and transparent system of allowing marijuana into our state.
Thank you. Same question, Stephen Michael Palmer.
Because it's legal, it doesn't make it right. I don't like to see it. I feel that it should be a limited amount of shops in this Pembroke, Kingston, Plymouth, Moran, Sandwich, and Falmouth. I'd like to see it more in the cities. John has talked about the Gaming Commission. It's kind of like they build a casino in Springfield and then they build one in Everett, and it's kind of like the two are fighting and one will go out of business. So I really feel that it should be restricted selling it in this community. I will fight for that. My kids don't do it, I don't do it, and I hope and pray that it doesn't work, but it's revenue, it's lobbyists, it's special interest groups, and that's how it got up.
Thank you. Same question, Sue.
I would like to see more local control. This is brand new. It's something that we have to work with our municipal offices, including our police offices, including our zoning, our neighbors. I think that there should be more local control added to the legislation that passed. Thank you.
And Charles, question?
Well, thank you, Christine.
Okay.
Let's talk about housing and the direction it's going in from Beacon Hill. The most recent bills encourage more affordable housing, less local control on affordable housing, and giving incentives for transportation hubs, housing around transportation hubs. Plymouth has a transportation hub, and there's a lot of housing being built out around that. Kingston has a transportation hub, and there's about to be a lot of housing built around that. But it doesn't take into account the commuter rail to Falmouth. You have commuter rail in Falmouth, right?
Not quite.
No. So how would you emphasize housing? What would you incentivize and try to discourage as a legislator? Becky, let's start with you.
So we have in Pembroke a 40B right now that Pembroke has opposed because it's on a very sensitive watershed area. It's mostly going to bring in high-income housing on the North River, and it is not going to really add that much to our affordable housing stock, and it's going to create a huge traffic problem that doesn't come along. There's no solution that comes along with that 40B project. But because we want affordable housing in our state, that project will likely it has been approved. We're dealing with some issues as to whether we're at our 10% and whether it will ultimately go through. I think we need to look at 40B. It is a good project. I mean, it's a good statute in theory because we need affordable housing, and I've seen a lot of not in my backyard as a member of the planning board. But I also think that there are towns like Pembroke and Plymouth that have a lot of affordable housing stock already, and I think we should look at the affordable housing stock in communities as part of the 40B analysis.
Let's go to you, Stephen. What can the legislature do about housing?
I'm a commissioner of redevelopment authority in the town of Plymouth, and the fact is that I have toured the project in Plymouth. I don't know if you know about it. It's the Algonquin Heights, and they said I was probably one of the first politicians that ever went there as a commissioner, and I saw that the pool wasn't open, and I questioned that, and I lobbied it, and it opened up this year, which is a wonderful thing. The fact is that, you know, we build Pine Hills and we build Red Brook and we use all the water, but yet there's 300 children in that project don't have a swing and they don't have a slide. So it's the haves and the have-nots. It goes over and over and over. Something has to be done for the middle class.
Tom, what would you do as a legislator around housing?
Well, I feel, as I hope that we as Democrats feel, that the government should be looking out for the weakest among us, and that those who are working and that those who want to stay full-time in our community should be able to do so. But the incredible rise of the cost of housing and the cost of living in our area is exponential. Of course, we live in a beautiful area, but the issues of transportation and affordable housing are directly tied to the kind of community that we want to be. And we don't want to be the kind of community that is separating by the haves or haves not. And we want to make sure that not only do they have a place to live, but that the small businesses have the workforce that they need to operate, because that's an issue that's directly tied into it too. So we absolutely need to be doing more about this. And I think there's a lot of really smart ways that you can do it without upsetting the fabric of a community.
Sue, what about housing development around that Falmouth commuter rail
Sure.
station?
So we definitely need more transportation options, but one of the things that I would do when I get to the State House is immediately revamp 40B. It's an older piece of legislation that really has Boston and very populated areas in focus. I don't think it addresses well communities in the Plymouth Barnstable District, number one. I also think that we should make it a conversation that includes the communities, builders. How do we do this where it makes sense? People can't afford childcare. Do we give a tax credit maybe if you're willing to build where you have a daycare in the building? I think that this is a solvable solution where we have to stop the profit centers and the silos and look at what we need for today's living for folks of all ages and all affordability. We need firemen, we need nurses, we need all these folks in our community to afford to live here.
Thank you. Let's go to John Mahoney.
John Mahoney, Plymouth has more than 3,000 housing permits about to be let. What would you do as a state legislator?
So, in 2017, I did a site visit to a future well site in the middle of the woods in South Plymouth with Chairman Tavares, water superintendent, and the DPW director. And once again, it all comes back to water. So during the drought of 2016, the Manomet well, a village in Plymouth, had no water in it. And there was no surplus water in the rest of the system. So that happened numerous times that summer, and I looked at the town employees. I said, what did you do? This is a direct quote. We crossed our fingers and hoped that the public didn't figure it out. Okay? That's where you're at. I agree with Ms. Moran. The problem is the legislation you get out of Beacon Hill is one size fits all. And one of the worst pieces of legislation to come out of Boston post-World War II is 40B. It is an absolute abomination. An evaluation was done 15 years ago by the Inspector General of the Commonwealth, Greg Sullivan. It is the most corrupt piece of legislation out there. I have in-laws that live in Kingston. They live in a mobile home. They moved to the mobile home because that is affordable for them. Mobile home stocks are not counted
Thank you
towards
very
the inventory.
John Mahoney. Wow, can you believe we've gotten through 9 questions with 5 people?
Yeah.
No one's screaming yet. This is pretty good. I like this. We are limited with our time because we can't talk all morning. Even I think all of us probably could. Let's go to the lightning round, and remember that these are the answers that we're looking for. 1 or 2 sentences, and we'll ask or a yes or no question. I'm going to start here. 2 sentences. Why are you a Democrat, John Mahoney? 2 sentences.
Christine, you're killing me.
Come on.
That's one.
That's 1. Let's go. Chop, chop.
Probably the balance between the social umbrellas with respect to helping people and environmental protection, and
Okay.
then obviously middle class
Thank you.
support.
Same question. Thomas Moakley.
I'm a Democrat because my dad was a Democrat. He passed away this past year, but he got on so many charity lists that we still get a mountain of mail every single day.
Okay.
He just knows that it's important to help others.
See, isn't it tough? 1 or 2 sentences. Becky Coletta, can you do it in 2 sentences?
Corporations exist for profit. Government exists to protect our well-being.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Michael Palmer, 2 sentences. Why are you a Democrat?
Born a Democrat, baptized a Catholic. I'm going to represent the middle class, not the corporate America like Verizon.
Okay, thank you. Sue Moran, same question.
Thanks. I am a lifelong Democrat, love all the programs, but I want to be sure we can afford them without hurting the middle class.
Okay, Charles Mathewson, lightning round question.
Same order. Imagine a political spectrum with Mitch being 1 and Bernie being 5. Where do you lie on that?
1 to 5?
1 to
Okay.
5, Mitch is 1 and Bernie is 5.
Okay, let's go right down there.
John.
Let's start with John Mahoney.
3.75.
Mr. Moakley.
I was going to say pie, but now I'm going to say now I'm going to say 4.
Okay, Becky.
4.5.
Okay. Stephen Michael Palmer.
4.
Okay. Sue Moran.
3.
Okay. My favorite question I ask at every single forum. County government, I know we've got 2 counties represented here. 2 sentences. What do you get out of county government or your community? Let's start down here. Sue Moran.
Shared expenses.
Okay. Stephen Michael Palmer. County government, what do you get out of it?
Expenses.
Okay. I was going to ask you, but you're not running. Becky Coletta.
I'm sitting.
Plymouth County could expand county government to provide more services.
Okay. Thomas Moakley, county government, what do you get out of it?
Professional sheriffs and district attorneys.
Okay. John Mahoney.
Christine, you said it. There's 2 different counties in this government. I think Barnstable County does an excellent job, and Plymouth County really has a lot of work to do.
Okay. Charlie.
In the same order, starting with Sue, Chiefs or Niners?
Chiefs.
Stephen?
Chiefs.
Niners.
Chiefs.
I'll go with Andy Reid, Chiefs.
Okay. Would you ever support the death penalty? Let's start down here. Sue Moran, yes or no?
No.
Okay, Stephen Michael Palmer, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Yes or no? Becky?
No.
No.
Thomas
No.
Moakley? John Mahoney, okay. Charlie?
I'm all done.
Okay. Let's go to our,
Go to closing statements.
thank you very much. Okay,
Certainly.
we're going to reverse the order now with our closing statements. Remember, it's 1 minute. I know it's tough to say everything you have to say in 1 minute, but we are going to go reverse order, and we began last time with John Mahoney, so we were going to start this time with Sue Moran.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate every single thing you do for the community because I know that's who was in this room. I am running to bring my lengthy experience to the State House so we can implement some of the programs that we have all been working for. You'll find more information at votemoran.com, and if you have any questions whatsoever, you'll find a way to contact me right there. I get back to everyone as I have for the last 5.5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's go to Thomas Moakley now, closing statement.
Once again, I want to thank everybody for being here, for you guys for putting together this event. I think we have a lot to look forward to in 2020 as Democrats, and the way that we're going to do it is by voting. Our primary election is on March 3rd. Our general election is on March 31st. We have an incredible group, as you've seen today, of Democrats running. And the best part about it is that this is a kind of campaign where we learn from each other and that we get to do things like this. You can learn more about me at thomasmoakley.com, Moakley. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. That was Thomas Moakley. Let's go to Becky Coletta.
Thank you all for being involved in our democracy this morning. I told you a lot about myself through the course of these questions, but my real inspiration for running is my son. He came to me the other day and said, "Mom, growing up in Pembroke, I feel like I'm growing up in a big campground." And I just don't have the heart to tell him that when he gets older and has kids, when he suffers the effects of global climate change because we don't have the strength or the foresight or the willingness to do more, that they may not have that campground to play in. I am running because I want him to grow up in a world in which he has as much opportunity as I had, in which we address the problems of our middle class struggling to keep up, and in which we find ways to make housing, education, health services, transportation available and accessible to him. I hope I earn your vote so I can begin to work on those issues on Beacon Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go now to Stephen Michael Palmer.
When I first started here, I asked everyone from my vote back, the 5,000 people that voted in the last primary. Touched my heart to have people talk about their fathers. My father was a railroad worker in the railroad yards in South Boston, changing brake shoes at night. He actually went to Boston College and got his degree, and he was a probation officer for 27 years at the West Roxbury Courthouse, and he taught me right from wrong. And the reason why I'm here is that things aren't being right. Things aren't for the working class anymore. And I feel that, we have to do something. The party is losing a lot of good people to the Republican Party. Things have to change. We can't be as liberal as we have been. The billionaires beat the millionaires this year in the presidential election, and look what we have. So we need to strive to change, to be moderate instead of liberal.
Thank you. Let's go to John Mahoney now, closing statement.
So a month ago, I was on a door. A 73-year-old male came, and I introduced myself and said I was running for state senate, and the individual immediately turned the conversation on me in a positive way, and you would have thought that he was the candidate and trying to get my vote. And he talked about how he lost his father before he turned 6, and there was a social safety net there for his siblings and his mother. And if it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have had a roof over his head. He was able to come out of college with no debt. He was able to raise his family, and now his son calls him and says, "Dad, I don't know how you did it." And that's why I'm a Democrat, okay? When people need help, they should get help. There should be a net there to help them when they need help or they want help from government. My name is John Mahoney. I'm running to represent you up at Beacon Hill because of middle-class, blue-collar, kitchen table issues. I've been on the select board in Plymouth for 12 years. We get things done, and I'm looking forward to continue that work collaboratively across the aisle, and I will do that for you. So this is 28 days from Tuesday. If you ever have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard from the 5 candidates here, the Democrats here. They've had all their time to speak. We asked earlier, because I know sometimes we can't get to all the questions, and there were good questions you folks sent. So I believe the candidates are going to be out in one of the side rooms, and if you have a specific question, you want to speak to them one-on-one, you can do that after this forum. So you can get all your questions answered. But I want to say thank you for stepping up to run for an election. This is terrific, and March 3rd is the primary date. And as Charlie Mathewson and I always say, from WATD, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. Get out there and vote. It's your right, it's your privilege, it's your duty. Thank you.